I don't get. different for him. I like it.
Oops. Thanks.
Yeah. We're on.
Okay, let's call this work session to order, and we're going to start with a discussion about the Milwaukie Leadership Academy, led by our city manager, Ann Ober, and
And
participated
the
in
fabulous Stefan.
the fabulous, the one, the only.
Thank you all for the opportunity to come chat with you about the Milwaukie Leadership Academy. This has been something that Stefan and I have actually talked about since he was the interim acting assistant city manager. And it's something that we're both really passionate about. Both of us have come from cities where we had a leadership forum where community members could learn more about what happens in city government and to create the relationships. It reduces the stigma and it reduces the fear that goes along with interacting with the city and creates a better understanding of how to make change and how to create opportunities for change within the city structure. And so we had Christina Fadenreck do her master's thesis project on engagement. And as a part of that, she started talking about this again, and Stefan and I said, well, maybe today is the day. So the community engagement goal that Kelly presented at the last meeting presented this as one of the projects associated with that goal. And it's really being made possible without any extra funding because of Stefan and because of Christina's interest. And I'm going to turn it over to Stefan just to talk a little bit about what that's going to look like.
Okay.
Is that fair?
So most of my experience with this came from working for the city of Wilsonville, and I was directly involved as a department head and an assistant department head over 5 or 6 years there. The last 5 or 6 I was there. And I should step back and say I'm a really strong believer in true democracy as compared to a republic. And if there was a way to do it, I would have everybody vote on everything. But that's not entirely realistic today. But it does take me to a point of saying, how do we get more people involved? How do we get more people knowledgeable? How do we get them even paying attention? So I see this as creating an opportunity for people to learn about what goes on with the city, how it works, what it does, what it doesn't do that they might think it does do. A chance for them to get their questions answered without any apprehension about that. And eventually, it's also a way for some of them to step in and get more involved in city government. And we saw that in Wilsonville. There's at least one city councilor there now who was in one of the classes I was involved with a few years ago, and probably more than one. I just haven't been there for a while. So that proved to me it can work. And those classes were really well attended. People wanted to be there. They asked great questions. They debated amongst themselves. It was a good thing, and they're still doing it, I'm sure. Maybe some people even are apprehensive about appearing at a public hearing or a workshop or, the mini open house type things because they don't know how to get involved or they wouldn't know what to say or they feel awkward about it. I hear all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they are operating with some misinformation that might be correctable. And sometimes we just need to help them get past those apprehensions and get involved. And I've certainly known a few, I'm thinking of one I live with, who was really apprehensive about getting involved in a city board or commission. But once she did, she could not have immersed herself more in it, so there's a case study right there at home. And maybe some of them don't want to do anything more than learn more. That still has value to the community. So the format that I envision is really simple. We get department heads or managers in departments, divide them up 2 or 3 per evening meeting. So one might be community development and that's not a good example because it's got so many branches, but say Public Works and Police one night. And the police chief and the public works director would attend. They'd each have a certain amount of time to talk about what their departments do, how they do it, and then the rest of it's questions and answers. And I'll tell you, just from my experience with that in Wilsonville, when I first started presenting as the city's transit director, I felt like I needed flowcharts and maps and graphics and all kinds of details. And by about year 5, I said about 3 sentences and said, I'd like to answer your questions. And it worked much better. So, it'll be different for different departments. Certainly some departments will have projects going on right now or things are about to start that they will really want to talk about. That's perfect. Anyway, so I don't see this as being restrictive in terms of who can participate, other than it's a Milwaukie focus. We're hoping to fill the room with people who want to do this, and I hope we have to turn some away in the first round and say, we can't accommodate that many people. That would be perfect. And that was the experience in Wilsonville. And those people got on the waiting list and came back later. And I guess it just work the way through the departments. We've talked to Councilor Parks about her experience with a much broader scale leadership training that was county-wide. And there's a lot we can learn from that, although that's way beyond the scope of what we're trying to do with this. So.
But wouldn't you do some field trips? I mean, wouldn't you take them to facilities and talk about and walk through the Public Works yard?
So we'll actually hold it at the Public Works facility for that night. So we've figured out which rooms. That's actually how we set the number of participants, is how many can we safely take through each of our facilities, so that people do actually engage with JCB. They do actually engage with the police department and break it up that way. Christina had come up with a list of dates actually based on that, and when the library was going to be done, so that every facility did actually host, and that the staffing was arranged around that facility.
Yeah. The field trips that we had in Wilsonville that were very popular, and oddly so, were the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant. We don't have either of those directly here to work with, but certainly well sites and things like that could be part of a public works field trip. So,
other questions?
No, but if I may, thank you. As Stefan mentioned, and Ann and I had a short discussion about this yesterday. So I have a 30-year history of developing leadership programs, both for adults and for high school students. We ran a very, very successful Leadership Clackamas County up here for the 14 years that I was with the Chamber. And about half that time, we also, in conjunction with Leadership Clackamas County, which was the adult program, we also had an integrated youth leadership program. If I remember correctly, I think Cindy is a graduate of Leadership Clackamas County. Yeah, as am I. And we basically, we're trying to give information to people about how the county works, how the region works, how the state works, that type of thing. So like you say, a broader scale. However, I certainly understand and can see the value of what folks need to know on the local level. That most leadership programs, and the one I ran in California, was a citywide program. Even though we called it Leadership Kings County, it was centered around Hanford, California, and the kinds of things that volunteers needed to know. What I've found in both the California program and in the programs up here is that many of those people do gain that confidence to go on and either be a larger part of, say, an open house, or they apply for a committee, or in many cases, a lot of the folks that went through our programs also then, kind of stepped up in their business in different ways. And a lot of them also were entrepreneurs. And many of them in the programs that we put together were folks that wanted to take a stronger elected leader role. And so we had a great hand in developing that type of thing. I would love to offer any help that I can provide, whether it's big, little, whatever, I hope that some of the situations that I've been through and some of the questions that, we asked our communities and that we heard back from and stuff may benefit Milwaukie on that level. So I'd like to be involved in whatever way I could. And if there's an opportunity for a city council liaison with the blessing of my city council, I'd be happy to step in and do that, as long as Stefan is the leader.
And I would welcome your help.
of that, that I may only offer one little piece of something throughout the entire year, but it's Stefan and Ann that have been developing this program, and I think they've got a good start on it, and it sounds like it's got a good prognosis. And, personally, I'd love to be involved again in a leadership program.
You might have a hard time keeping me away, so we'll have to figure out sort of a schedule for when the other counselors can also attend these things, so we don't have a quorum.
Just discourage 3 of you for any
Yeah.
given meeting.
Right.
No, and I think we can do that on a sign-up basis. There's a couple of pieces that I do want to just make sure that the general public knows. We're going to be taking applications on a first-come, first-served basis, so we're not actually going to be doing any selection of who. For the first year, if you get your application in first, you get in. If you get it in to number 20, you get in. After 20, we have to debate whether or not we can hold it at a facility, and we'll create a hold list for the next year. And we're saying that because this is really, our goal is to get diverse members of our community to come in who maybe haven't engaged before. So I'm also looking to all of you, because I know all of you have different networks of people, to try and get as many individuals interested in the program. Our hope is that these are new people. That these are people that we don't typically see at every meeting, though if you are and you want to go through this process, you're welcome to do that too. But, we had talked about the housing town hall meeting, that the housing town hall meeting had a very diverse group of people that we haven't seen at most of our other meetings. It'd be great to have those individuals come through this process. One of the pieces that I spoke with Councilor Parks about is that we are doing this on a shoestring. We're not asking for any application fee. We're not asking for people to pay any sort of money towards the program. So we don't have a budget built for this. We do have some minor things that we'll be paying for, such as food at night, and then interpretive services if they are needed in order to help someone fully engage. But otherwise, we're really not planning on spending any money this year. If there are some ideas that we can do in-house, like we've talked about, such as a volunteer project, which is what most of these programs end up adopting at some point, is the program itself actually creates a volunteer project that everybody joins together and creates without staff. So in Park City, when we were doing this, they actually wrote a book on recycling for kids that they could distribute to the schools. They got all the money donated for the illustrations and for the printing to get enough copies into the schools for students who were interested. But they chose the project, they found the funding, and then they actually went through the process in order to get it built. We have a lot of ideas after the first year. Our hope is that 1 year we just see if it works and see what tweaks we need in order to make it function, and then we'll grow it over time.
And Ann, one of the things you'd mentioned is that you're going to look for students at age beginning about 16 and up.
Correct.
So I think that's important too, that we reach out to the high school students and have them integrated with, with the older folks, whether it's 30 years old or 60 years old, whatever.
Two things that have come out of that I do want to just get feedback from you on. We had originally planned on this starting in September. Because the high school is not in until mid-August, it's going to be really hard to get applications from students before that time.
I already sent it to Principal Gelman, by the way.
She and I are meeting tomorrow.
Awesome.
In order to talk about this. So that's great, but she still isn't going to have students in-house. And so part of our thought or question to you is we can wait and start this in October with applications being accepted until September 1. It's still not a ton of time for the students, but it does give us a month before we start, once they're in school, to try and get a few applications through the process.
Are the students back before Labor Day?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They come in
By the
mid-August.
end of August.
Yeah.
And that
So we'll have 2
Here
weeks.
as that seems.
I don't know
That makes a lot of sense to me, and not just for
students at the high school, but we're all a little scatterbrained in the summer in general, I think. So just in terms of reaching people who may not already be completely keyed into the city, I think a little more lead time to get the word out before starting the application process might be good. Because I worry that we'll have 20 of our already enthusiastic volunteers who say, this sounds like a really cool opportunity to hang out with people I really like for an extended period of time. So I'd like to do what we can to help get new people in the door.
Yeah,
Well, and we
July
can-
1st opening isn't very
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
lead time.
We can hold 4 positions too for students. If they're not filled, we can backfill them with other
Yeah.
roles,
Yeah.
but that way at least there's enough time at the tail end of the application pool that if they do come through, that they can get a slot.
And can we, I mean, we've talked about marketing through the high schools, but the college also would, I think, be a really good place.
The Harmony campus?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Harmony campus, yeah. And I have the school editor's info at home.
That would be
She and I
great.
communicate.
I will be looking to all of you to help me get this information out. We are putting it in the pilot this month, so it'll go live this month. The website is up.
Are you going to ask that folks live in the city of Milwaukee?
We did not. We asked for them just to have an interest in the city of Milwaukee. So this is open to people who live or work here. People who literally work for the city are also invited to participate. It's a way for us to build our community stronger.
I had a question, sorry, just a real quick one. Is if there's a way in the process to ask some sort of question about whether or not 6 to 8 p.m. being the time slot is a barrier for anyone. I don't know that it will be, and I don't know that you could do anything about it if it was, but the question came up in my mind because if you're working second shift or what have you, this isn't going to be something you can participate in.
Yeah, and I think the bigger thing for me is that most people who are working can't get here till the evening, and
Yeah.
most of my staff can't be here on weekends. So in order to sort of group the two, our thought was, and then honestly, scheduling, as you guys know, all of the boards and commissions we already have, makes it really hard to find a night. We could start it earlier, though, and I'm happy to hold it later. So we can have that discussion with people if it looks like a better time is actually 7 to 9, or even coming in at like 5 to 9, whatever that looks like, we can structure it. But it'll probably have to be a weeknight.
Yeah, and I guess I was thinking more asking the question as a data point rather than as a thing to try and fix right off the bat.
Okay.
I'm curious if people are not applying because they can't make that, if they're self-selecting themselves out for reasons that they shouldn't necessarily.
Sure.
It's not a huge deal. It just came to mind.
No, I think that that's great. We're working on the application right now. I actually had it translated, our boards and commissions application translated fully so that we can use that all over the place. But we are creating a separate one that brings in the CET questions that we ask for that process, as well as our general boards and commissions questions. I can put something on the website that says, if the time and date is a barrier, please let me know.
Great.
So at least we get that data set.
And are you asking them to commit to so many out of the,
It's actually, in Park City, it was mandatory that you only could miss one. And it was never enforced, but it was simply a statement of, please really make a commitment here, because you're taking a slot from somebody else.
right.
So we haven't made it as forceful here, but we are asking that people make a commitment that they are really going to participate in all the meetings.
And the county, I remember seeing them soliciting last fall or maybe earlier this year, and they call theirs a Citizens Academy as opposed to a Leadership Academy. And I just wondered if you think you mentioned, the people who are already intimidated to come in, are they going to be intimidated? Does the word leadership make them think, oh my God, I'm committing myself to, doing something down the road?
Yeah.
My response to that is that I think more people would be intimidated by the thought of citizenship if they were not citizens.
Well, that's true.
You could also go for, I know Missoula, I think, is just calling theirs City 101 or something like that.
Well, and in Park City, we did a 101 class. We actually did it as a one day, twice a year thing where people could just come in and learn. I'm open. I really am.
Yeah.
we also can our thought is that this group of people, when we pull them together at the end, the last day is actually a debrief. What worked, what didn't, what should we change, what would make this clear, what would make this function better, what project would you guys want to take on? Here's a list of things other forums do. Which ones of these really make the most sense based on what you learned at this training?
Well, the other thing that I think I heard Stefan mention earlier when we were talking for a brief few minutes was about seeing if we could get Clackamas Community College credits for the class. So generally, I mean, I know that Citizen Leadership does, or Citizen Academy, or whatever the county calls it. And when the chamber did their leadership program, even for the youth, there were college credits available for that. So they seem to be amenable to those kinds of things, so that would perhaps be an incentive for some people also.
I think it's a great idea.
He mentioned it first, or second, one or the other. Part of the discussion with the high school is also going to be, if Principal Gelman would like to try and tie this into a civics course, then that also works for us. We'd like to see what the structure is that most makes sense for her. We're also talking to her about the youth appointments onto some of our boards and commissions, so she's been helping us figure out what a structure like that would be like in order in September to be able to start making some recommendations of students.
Good.
Anything we missed?
I think it's exciting. And I feel really honored for the city of Milwaukee that Stefan would step up and agree to lead a project like this, because it's going to really make a difference for those people that go through it. So
Thank you. I hope you're right.
I think so.
I think she is.
Well, I think it's going to make a difference for us, too. I think, opening up something like this is an opportunity for us to learn and to get some good feedback. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Well, one of the interesting things that I was talking to Scott about is just we have so many boards right now where we have openings, and having a group of people that can help us get the word out or themselves apply is also another opportunity for all of us. Get some new thoughts on matters.
Yeah, I was thinking today about the fact that city has 100+ employees, has more volunteers than that, and each depends on the other, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah.
Literally today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we will be proceeding. We'll start it as an October start date. We'll change that in the pilot. It will go in the pilot, though, for this next month. And we will hold back 4 of the slots for students. If those go unfilled by students, then we'll fill them with the remainder of whoever the next 4 were. And we will get you something that you can take out to the community, or you can forward out, as well as the application. Great.
As I believe the person who is writing the counselor piece for August, I would love it if you could send that to me.
Yes, happy to. And I'll make sure you also got the text for what we're putting in for July.
Thanks.
Does that mean we're starting up the counselor articles again?
Check in with Jordan on that, because I thought I was doing August.
Well, this is my recollection from back in April, so.
Well, they missed a month or 2 in there, yeah.
So we better get.
Which I thought was great. There was great info in the paper, quite frankly.
Wait, just send all that information to us if you could.
I will send it out. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
All right, next up, we have a discussion about extending the North Clackamas Enterprise Zone, and this will be led by Leila Iman.
Thanks, Scott. Yes. There's some slides. That's not it. I'll open it up in a moment. Well, good afternoon, counselors, Mayor, Leila Iman, the interim Community Development Director, and I'm joined here today with Cindy Moore and John Lagarza from the county. Today, we're asking you to provide feedback to us on whether or not to support a redesignation of the North Clackamas County Enterprise Zone. And before I go any further, I did want to clarify a point that I noticed in the staff report under the workload impacts, and I am going to credit this to me getting rapidly up to speed on a new program now that I've taken on this new role. And just to clarify that today what we're asking for is for your feedback and input on a redesignation. There's some language in here which looks like we are asking for a boundary change and an amendment. So I apologize for that confusion. This is a redesignation. Cindy will talk a little bit about the remapping process because Happy Valley has dropped out currently based on some demographic changes. So my, again, apologies for any confusion that this is a discussion around a redesignation of the zone, which expires at the end of June. So what we're asking today is, again, for your input and feedback on whether or not to redesignate the zone. Cindy is the administrator of the program for the county, so I will ask her to give you guys kind of some background on what the program is for those who maybe aren't familiar, and what the process is for the redesignation as well. But just to remind folks of kind of the history of the program in the city, it's been in place since 1997. Council approved an expansion of the zone in 2016 to include our downtown and the North Milwaukie area. We are not proposing any additional amendments to our where it interacts with our jurisdiction. And again, as I mentioned, due to some demographic changes in the community of Happy Valley, that the city is no longer going to be participating, but Cindy can talk a little bit further about that. So what this is going to require is for the county to move forward is approvals from all the jurisdictions that are participating. And so today, what this opportunity is in the work session is for you to have a chance to talk with the county about what the program does, the benefits that it brings to businesses within the communities, and to have any questions you might have about the program itself answered and what the process is. So with that, I think I will hand it over to Cindy, and while she's talking about kind of the criteria and next steps, I will be pulling up a map that we will also discuss with you. Cindy, pull that over. Make sure you can hear it.
Thank you, Layla. Good afternoon, Mayor Gamba and councilors. It's our pleasure to be here today to discuss the North Urban Clackamas County Enterprise Zone and the redesignation. I wanted to make sure that you had received copies of the Enterprise Zone flyer, and if not, we have additional handouts that I can
did not.
distribute. Sure, no problem. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And we also have hard copies of the map that Layla's going to bring up too, so we can distribute those if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thanks. Right now. So just so everybody is on the same page as to the Enterprise Zone, it is a statewide abatement program, incentive program that we administer locally. So there's about, I think, 79 now Enterprise Zones statewide. In Clackamas County as a whole, we have 5. And as mentioned, this particular zone was originally designated in 1998. They're 10-year designations, and so this is why we're in front of you today. A couple of highlights for the program as it relates specifically to the city of Milwaukie. We've had an estimated investment by the companies themselves listed on their authorization application of, over $42.5 million in the last 10 years. And again, these numbers are specific to the city of Milwaukie. We've had employment in the growth up by 813 employees. So the companies who have participated in the program have added that many employees to their payroll.
Just in Milwaukie.
Just specifically for Milwaukie. And I have those numbers for the whole zone. If you'd like to, I can bring those up. But essentially what this offers is your existing companies or any new companies moving into the zone the opportunity to have an abatement either for 3 or 5 years on new investments in machinery and equipment or buildings. So it has nothing to do with the actual land value itself, but any improvements that go onto those properties as identified within the zone boundaries. So it's one of the few incentives that we have available that not only hits your existing businesses, which is our bread and butter when it comes to retention and expansion efforts, but also in the form of recruitment activities. When companies are looking at different communities and why they would locate where, this is a great incentive that we offer in the zones that we have currently in place. So the 3 and the 5-year options, there's the only real difference between the 3 and the 5-year has to do with the wages that are paid to the new employees coming on as part of the project. So for companies to qualify, they need to increase their employment by 10%. And with that 10% increase on the 3-year program, it's 150% of the state minimum wage. For the 5-year, it's 150% of the county average wage. So on the flyer that we distributed, those numbers are listed. The majority, if I would say like 95% of the participants in the last 10 years have hit the 3-year goal. And the 5-year goal, if you do not meet the criteria of the program, basically what that means is that you repay the taxes that have been abated as part of the original approval. So it's an opt-in program. We're really excited to be able to be here today to share this information with you, and I'm happy to field any questions that you might have.
Could you tell me anything about how the 800 jobs, 800 plus jobs are distributed? Is it one particular employer, or is it fairly sprinkled out throughout the zone? Or?
Sure. So the 800 employees were specifically for companies that are currently located within the city of Milwaukee. And so when a company applies, they say, I have 50 employees, I'm going to increase by 10%, so that'd be my hard math, 5, thank you. And so we base those numbers off the authorization applications when they submit them.
Right. I understood that part. What I was asking was, are there certain companies that are increasing by 20 or 30% and other companies that are just hitting the 10% mark? Or I'm trying to get a sense of distribution.
Sure. What we found as a trend is that actually the companies overinvest. They're conservative on their applications, and we encourage that too. You have to meet the minimum criteria. But what we found over time is that actually the companies invest more in comparison to what they originally submitted in their authorization.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And can you give us, and it may not be something that you brought with you, but I guess I'd be interested to see a real-life example of a Milwaukie company, like it entered at X year and its taxes were abated over this time, and when it came back on the tax rolls, the taxes were X, had gone up by how much, and the employment had gone up by how much?
Sure. If I could just have a moment just to look at the spreadsheet and see if I have that information at the ready. If not, we can certainly provide that. And the information that I'm sharing today is a public record. Once the companies are in the program, we have a full transparency report that we send to the state every year through our assessor's office. So let's take a look here. Let's use final employment. How about Portland Mechanical Contractors?
Oh, yeah.
Starting employment in the zone when they submitted their authorization application was 80. Their final employment was 137. So it's an increase of 57 employees. Their initial investment was $1.2 million. The total taxes that were abated was $35,000. And the formulas that are determined for the abatement is all done by the assessor's office. And so if there's details that you would like on that, I can certainly provide that information.
That was a total, not a per year.
That was a total, yes. If you'd like, I can tell you.
That was a relatively small investment, yeah.
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 But for example, also you can look at Precision Cast Parts, which started employment at 1,940, final employment 2,257, so an increase of 317 positions. Total investment, $25 million. Total taxes abated, $1.4 million. I'll give you a different example.
And the investments that they're making in, so the investments they're making, in addition to being abated, those are actually going to increase their taxes once they come off
on the tax rolls,
abatement, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Right.
once they come back, or once they come out of the program, that new investment is captured on the tax rolls starting in year 4, or in the 5 would be year 6.
Right. Okay.
And I think it's also important to note that one of the things we're looking at for the zone on this redesignation is including, there's a hotel motel option that you can include on enterprise zone authorizations, so that if a community is interested in attracting a hotel and motel, they could qualify under the enterprise zone abatement. And that's important because normally, well, not normally, but the criteria for the program is specific to traded sector companies, so companies who sell their goods and services outside of the region, not specifically for retail or transactional type of operations.
Right. And does the application patterns or participation in the program, how does it fluctuate with the economy?
That's a great question. We haven't done a specific analysis, but I can tell you right now, our numbers are really active.
Oh, really? Yeah.
My manager, he can attest to it. I live and breathe this lately. So we're receiving a lot of inquiries lately. So it's a great trend that we're seeing.
And so it expires on June 30th. We're not going to have gone through all the jurisdictions by June 30th, right?
No, ma'am, but we're trying our best. Do you want to speak to that?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay. So there will be a little gap, and that is because we're having to readjust the boundaries based on the demographics. It's a good thing. Our community has grown up, so we had to look at the demographics in some of the unincorporated areas of Clackamas County that could be captured in the zone. We also spoke yesterday to the city of Gladstone, so we're looking to bring them into the fold as well. So it's a matter of going through the process and making sure that the public notices are done. And we're looking at a soft deadline of September-ish to have this in place. Part of that is we also reach out to all the taxing districts, and we'll be in charge of hosting a conversation with the taxing districts, and you'll all be invited if you'd like to come and participate in that. We'd love to have you.
So you mentioned, Happy Valley has fallen off because of demographic changes, and so I think it might be really important to maybe just really quickly, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about why that is, why Milwaukie still qualifies or will continue to qualify. Just talk a little bit about, what some of those requirements are, and maybe what, the purpose is. I think we can sort of read between the lines here, but I think it would be really good to maybe just get a sort of a high-level discussion around that.
Sure. So the analysis is basically looking at your census tracts in the communities. And in order to meet that threshold, the identified census tracts have to be with below 80 percentile of an average median household income. And so that's what our consultants and our staff are working on right now, is to identify those specific census tracts to make sure that we qualify. Because if we didn't as a community, then we didn't. And so what we looked at is, there's other areas that we haven't tapped into yet that could have the opportunity to benefit from a program like this. For example, the unincorporated area along McLaughlin and rolling into Gladstone, who hasn't participated either. And so that's really why we're looking at it.
Okay, and so then the purpose of then is to increase employment in those areas
Yes.
that are maybe have depressed wages. Is that?
That's a true statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of process, part of what today is to answer any questions you might have and then get your direction on whether or not you would like to move forward with supporting the county's efforts to reauthorize the zone. In such case, if that's the direction that you give us today, then we would be coming back. I believe we've scheduled it for July 6th for consent resolution that
16th.
would, the 16th, to support moving forward with and supporting the county's efforts to reauthorize the E-zone.
So I remember when I went to work for the chamber here in 1998, and in initial discussions back then with Cindy and others in Economic Development Department of the county, the enterprise zone was seen as one of the reasons why our business area was growing and was attracting people. And it would seem to me that that's still the same. I'm sitting here trying to think, are there any downsides to this? And offhand, I personally can't think of any other than, tax gets abated for those few years, but when it comes back online, similar to like an urban renewal zone, then the tax is so much larger. And these aren't necessarily, huge amounts that the tax gets abated on, because like the Portland Mechanical at $35,000 total over their several years, and that type of thing. So, is there any reason why we wouldn't, or any downsides that you can see to a community for not accepting an enterprise zone?
I think the one downside is what you've mentioned. You forego tax revenue, so that impacts taxing districts, including ourselves. But I think as staff that we see this as an incentive to bring, as Councilor Falconer pointed out, the intent of a program like this is to bring more jobs into our community. Because the criteria is about median income, I think the intent is to align jobs with communities that have folks who are earning less than 80% of the median income, to give them opportunities for jobs within their own community. communities. So I see it as a positive. It's an incentive that is administered by the state. But again, I think the downside is, as you've mentioned, is that you do forego a bit of tax revenue for a 3 to 5 period time. But ultimately, you maintain those jobs over time and the additional revenue that will be generated from those investments of those companies.
So since,
Some-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, since this basically is for traded sector companies and basically for equipment and/or, rehabbing a building and so on and so forth. So I would imagine that businesses like Bob's Red Mill and Dave's Killer Bread have probably also had those opportunities to be involved. I don't know if either of them have participated.
Dave's Killer Bread has, Bob's has not.
I thought so, but I couldn't remember for sure, because I know they had to put in a lot more equipment, they had to rehab their building, all of that type of thing. So that's another example of local business that's now paying higher wages, because you've got to pay higher wages to be able to participate in the enterprise zone. They're paying higher wages than other similar businesses might do because they've benefited from the enterprise zone.
And if I may just highlight one other criteria that's listed on the program the companies have to participate in a first source hiring agreement. So that is basically the direct connection with the Oregon Employment Department. So as if a company participates in the program, they have to post those new positions, that 10% increase in employment, with the Oregon Employment Department. The companies are not required to hire from that pool, but it's a great notification and connection between
Sure.
the Department of Revenue, Business Oregon, who's our counterparts at the state, and the Oregon Employment Department. So.
Right.
Thank you.
I feel like just recently there's been some criticism in enterprise zones in the way that they've been taken advantage of and who benefits, especially in Portland, where maybe the benefits haven't necessarily gone to the people that they're meant to help. And so I wonder, if we can maybe, there's nothing we can do at the city level. This isn't a program that would be administered by us, but, I do want to make sure that we're talking about this in real terms, and who does this program benefit? It benefits the landowners, and not always necessarily. There's no like you said. There's no requirement that Milwaukeeans be hired into these jobs.
Correct.
So just to have an honest conversation here about who is really benefiting from this. Not necessarily Milwaukee residents, but definitely business owners and landowners who can take advantage of the tax agreements.
So I did have a question that, and I know you won't have hard answers to this, like facts, but sort of more of a gut. How often do you think people who are in this program would have made the same investment whether or not we had the program?
That is a great question. And I don't have those hard facts, but I can tell you that when companies are looking to make a decision on which communities they're going to make those investment in, part of our job is to keep on the short list. And any type of programs or business assistance that we can provide, that keeps us on that short list for consideration.
Right, that's new ones coming in, but ones that exist currently, and like Precision Cast Parts, right? They
Sure.
put in a new process. Would they have done the new process with or without the enterprise zone?
I don't know that answer. I'd hate to say yes or no and speak on behalf of the businesses. We understand that it's, a but-for is really where we're positioning this. It is by right. Once you're in the zone, you have that opportunity to participate once the zone is established. And so that's not a hard criteria that we have established on the program. But that's certainly the question of the day. Yeah.
I guess the sort of reciprocal or inverse question is, are you aware of companies that have made decisions to move or to invest in a different facility because there wasn't an enterprise zone? I guess what's on the horizon for Happy Valley if they aren't in a...
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning part of your question there.
I actually would love to just make a side comment about a meeting that Layla and I were in earlier today, actually with Councilor Faulkner. We were meeting with a business, and I'm going to leave them outside of this discussion, but in that conversation, they said, we decided to come here specifically because of the incentives that we were granted by the state. And it's hard to pinpoint which one is always going to be the one that gets them, and I think that this is the kind of business that you guys have been wanting to have come to this community. I've never heard any economic development person be able to pinpoint and say yes or no, they did or didn't come for that one benefit. It's really a package deal, and I'm not I just wanted to add that comment literally came to us today about a business that we care about a lot.
It does set a tone. That's a really good point. Thank you very much.
By the way, I should also say, we're agnostic on whether or not this one is the one that you guys want to use. So, Layla and I have talked ad nauseum about whether or not this is the perfect package for all the things that you guys want. If this isn't, it's okay. But I think we just need to allow these guys then to move forward with another trajectory at that point.
Why are you agnostic?
Yeah, and what are the other choices?
Why are you not
Why are we agnostic?
recommending support?
Yeah, because we have not put the kind of time and effort. Layla's relatively new in this seat, and I have not put the time and effort into looking at whether or not this tax benefit is the one that would be the best suited to what this council wants. But it is the one we've done in the past, and we do know that we've had businesses that we care about take advantage of it. And so we wanted to present that to you, but we haven't, one of the discussions I've had with Bonnie is, should we go look at all the tax credit options that were mentioned at the budget committee by the person from the state and see if there are better fits for things that we're trying to accomplish here in the city. And that's a package deal for a future year when we would come back to you and say, these are the ones that align with your policies. I do think that this is an opportunity for us to support our businesses, and it's a relatively low dollar way for us to support our businesses, and that's part of why we also see the positives of it. It's an easy win, and businesses are taking advantage of it.
They're obviously using it.
They are.
It's a great result.
So the county, or I guess my question is around boundaries, and when we get to that conversation, do we have any discretion in drawing those boundaries? Because, I take the point from Mark, or from the mayor, that maybe there might be places where folks are going to invest anyway because it's just too attractive. And so maybe, if there's any opportunity for us to drive that conversation around the boundaries, not just because of demographics, but maybe some other criteria that we might have knowledge about on the ground, sort of like, where the investments are likely to happen anyway.
Sure.
Where might we push some investments that might not occur but for this tool? Is there an opportunity there?
Which one? Well, I think that's partly what you did in 2016 when you expanded the boundary to include downtown and central Milwaukie. I think Cindy can speak to it much better than I can, certainly, but there are certain limitations. So whether it's zoned to support the type of business that would be eligible for this, I think looking at that map, we've covered a lot of that area, but I think, Councilor Falconer, that's something that if the program is reauthorized, that down the track that we can, working with the county, do expand into
Or-
areas or shrink.
Pinch off some that.
Right.
Were you
So I
thinking
think there's
outside of the
options.
city? Were you
No, I'm thinking only for
advocating
us.
for-
I'm just,
Where else
within our
in
own
the
boundaries,
city?
is there?
Now would be
So
the
the city
time. If
might
you'd like to
rethink
make
it.
changes to the map, if you'd like to shrink it to your specific question, if you'd like to shrink it, now would be the time to have that conversation, because that's exactly what we're doing, is talking to each of the councils to say, how would you like the boundaries to look?
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have thoughts, Councilor Faulkner?
Right now about boundaries?
Well, just in general, when you made the statement, are there things or nodes that you're really excited about using this tool at?
Well, I think, we've obviously seen, investment happening in some of the areas that are currently zoned, where we aren't seeing necessarily investment in some of the, I don't know if this would even, we'd have to have a bigger, I don't know, I'd have to look at the map to, to like kind of pinpoint where those opportunities might be. I don't want to just point at a map and say, we want some more investment to happen in these corridors, but we're not seeing it yet.
Well, but your question started from the vantage point of you think there's areas that are so hot that we don't need the tool.
Exactly. Yeah, so-
And so you must have something in mind.
Oh, sure, downtown. I mean, we're.
Downtown's already included.
That's my point.
She
that
wants to-
She's saying about pinching
we
it
might
off.
want to shrink some of those places where investment is already happening and is going to happen whether or not this tool is available.
Well, and frankly, apart from the hotel part, I don't know what much in downtown would be eligible, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Especially if it's looking at
it's
traded
got a
sector.
manufacturing component to it, but it
Or a
also-
headquarters facility could qualify?
Yeah, so it
as well.
doesn't have to just
Craft
be.
manufacturing, because
And it has to be traded sector. I've always understood that to be foreign trade. Is that
Not necessarily
I have to
foreign,
be
anything
interesting.
outside of the region,
outside of Portland metro
outside of the
region?
Portland metro
Outside the region,
Okay.
correct.
Yeah.
We also like to think of it, if this helps at all, to be like a value add. Something has to be happening on site that brings value to the product that then is being distributed outside of the region.
Yeah.
Could be food processing, could be manufacturing, could be office,
Could
Oh,
be
really?
hotel.
Office would qualify?
Oh, so, yeah, someone's headquarters.
headquarter facility, yeah. But also, just to clarify on the office piece, though, like cubicles would not qualify, right? But heavy machinery and equipment or any improvements that are TI work that's made to maybe retrofit an older facility into something more modern, that could qualify.
And full construction
HVAC
of a
issues,
building.
I'm sorry?
Full construction of a
Full
building
construction would
also.
count. Yep.
it's a great tool. It just gives you a lot of opportunities if someone's especially looking at, repositioning some of your assets in downtown. So, trying to, really think about leaving your zone the way it is, you're going to need that toolbox because people are going to show up one day,
Yeah.
and having that's going to make your city a lot more attractive.
Yeah, sure. My question isn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a statement that we should, but I do think that it's an important, question to ask.
Sure.
Are our boundaries, is this really the boundary that we want? Now that we know that we're giving up tax dollars, that could be quite large for some of these businesses, if one of our local traded sector companies were to all of a sudden, do all of their, if they were to be planning on making a huge investment anyway, maybe foregoing substantial dollars in the near term, and maybe not, maybe providing a benefit that we didn't necessarily, or foregoing money that we didn't necessarily need to give up.
But to even know if they might be doing something in the future, we almost have to have some kind of crystal ball or inside knowledge. And, I certainly don't know about anything like that. I do know that in the 23 years that the enterprise zone has been in place, that we have benefited tremendously from it. And that, years ago, it was one of the advantages that Clackamas County touted to businesses that were considering coming in here, and I assume it's still the same thing today, that it's one of the reasons that some businesses relocate here. It's also one of the reasons that some businesses choose to stay here and enlarge their premises rather than move somewhere else, maybe across the county line, if there's an enterprise zone up there. And enterprise zones provide benefit for the areas that they exist in.
I'll just note that the economic development page on the city's website does list it as the second of 6 things in why Milwaukie is great for business. So, I guess I would read that as Alma Flores thought it was an important thing to highlight if she placed it number 2 on the list.
So your list, is it up to date?
Yes, sir.
The most recent. So did Veridian use it?
They did not. We met with them, but we provided all the information and followed up as well, but they did not participate in the program.
Yeah. Do you have a couple of pending applications right now, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And we've
there-
also, and another one of interest came in as well. Yeah.
So some of the other businesses that we've talked about, similar to Veridian, are applying.
Yeah. And I would note, too, I think your point is really valid about foregone tax revenue, but this is a 3 to 5 year program, so it's a fairly short window.
Yeah.
And I
It's
think
not
for the
30
benefits
years,
that you
right?
realize from it, that the city then does get those additional resources once the timeline is undone, as opposed to more lengthy types of abatements or programs that we have in place that are necessary for our success. But this one is a shorter window, which I think mitigates some of that risk.
I also want to say one word of appreciation to the county. So part of what makes this one attractive to us is that it's very little staff involvement. So it is a program that benefits our businesses without us having to do much. I appreciate that they've been leading the charge and been really lovely to work with. So that's the other reason we felt comfortable moving forward without having Layla and I be more ready. Is just because they're really doing most of the lift.
Right. It goes through the ED department.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Team effort, man. It takes a village, I tell you, it takes a village.
Yeah.
I will also say, though, just one last thing on the statewide level, the Enterprise Zone program itself is set to sunset in 2025.
Oh, that's a
So
good point.
it will need to be reauthorized by the legislature statewide, so there's a chance that something might change in the next 5 years. Last time that came up, it was reauthorized, and the communities just kept on as they were, but I'll just make sure that you're aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't they expand it last time?
They did, they opened it up. It used to be capped at 36 enterprise zones, and now they opened that up, and so now communities could apply at will.
So to clarify, this reauthorization would get us through 2025.
Yes.
Yes, but if there's no change and it's reauthorized at the state level,
Then
then
it
it's
continues. 29.
2029. Oh, my goodness.
So
Yes.
10 years.
10 years.
So if a new business is coming to town, and whether they're constructing a new building or they're renovating a building that exists, what do we base their 10% increase in employment on?
Who do we base it on?
What do we base it on? Let's say they're brand new.
Yep,
It's a startup.
sure.
So they have zero number of employees
Okay.
because they're starting up. So then what do we cause,
That would be one employee then. Yeah, if they have 0 employees and they're just starting out, it would be 1 to qualify.
The application that I know of right now, though, is an existing business in Milwaukie that is fully functioning and is growing beyond their capacity. That's actually why they're coming in for the funds.
but if
So if
they
it's
were
under
an
10
existing
employees,
business,
it's
say,
1%.
in St.
Or, sorry,
Louis,
1. Yes.
and they had 50 employees in St. Louis,
Yes.
but they're hiring all new people here, is it still 50 employees?
Thank
And
you.
they have to add,
That is a very good question. So there's a 30-mile radius within the zone. So you have your zone itself, and then there's a 30-mile radius. Anybody coming from outside that 30-mile radius, it's an increase of 1 employee. So most of what we see in our region when it comes to retention expansion is kind of moves within the region, people going from Gresham to Hillsborough, Hillsborough to Milwaukie. So within that 30-mile radius, your requirement is to increase by 10%. But if you are coming from St. Louis, you're brand new here, it would be 1 employee. Thank you for that. Forgot to mention that.
And is it to pay all employees at least 150%?
The
Or is it
employees
just
are
the
10%
new? It's only the
increase.
10%.
Correct. And benefits can be used to achieve that level as well.
any other questions? Good. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
So
you.
just to confirm, we're proceeding with a resolution on the council, or you want to come back and look at the map again? What do you want our next step to be on this?
I think I thought the map conversation would be a later conversation.
Well, we have to change it now before we re-up, so,
Not
No.
like tonight,
No.
but that
But
conversation.
this summer,
but this summer.
Right.
Right.
Before we finalize the map, this would be my advice, before we finalize the map and take it to the taxing districts, we should know exactly what's going to be in the zone. That would be my advice to any community who's participating. And that's why we're trying to have these conversations now, so that we can then have that discussion and say, here's exactly what's going to be included in the zone.
So that could happen after the resolution re-upping, or no?
I would say before.
I would say you do it before. And then
So
you
the
do-
next meeting is July 16th. We can put this on the agenda for July 16th. Does that work for you all?
For the resolution?
Well,
For a
it'll have to
discussion
be
around the
both.
map.
We'll have to do the map, any amendments to the map, as well as the resolution on July 16th, or we can do the map and then move the vote on the resolution to the first meeting in August. That's why I wanted the clarification.
That's a good.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll change it. So on the 16th, you'll look at the map and you'll have that discussion. And then on the first meeting in August, we'll proceed with the resolution.
Yeah, we'll see what
Perfect.
the do on the map.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, next is council input on legislative and regional issues, a discussion. This will be led by our Assistant City Manager, Clay Brooks. So Leila,
Yeah.
exactly are you? Because it says still development
I
manager
am
there.
trying to
And it
figure
says
that out.
interim community.
Thank you for the name.
Development director. I've
here.
also seen
And
development.
I've heard that you're not interim anymore.
Right.
So what are you
She
exactly?
is interim.
Interim?
She is still interim.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, this goes to you.
I'm just a public servant.
Doing whatever I ask, right?
Woman of mystery.
There you go. Give her a job, she does it. That's
Right.
It's true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Can't quite get settled on whether I'm freezing or.
Can you turn it up?
No. I have a sweater.
She wore no sleeves. She chose.
Yes.
All right, good afternoon, evening. Kelly Brooks, Assistant City Manager. I think this may be one of the last ones of these I do.
For the what?
One of the last ones of these updates I do. It
Oh,
might
okay.
be, because I only do them during the session.
All right.
We're getting really close.
Don't meet again before sine die.
Yeah. So, yeah, unless something goes very wrong, it'll be the last one. House Bill 2001, there was a work session at 4 o'clock. It actually was voted out so it's heading to the House and the Senate.
With the ugly
21.
amendment or not the ugly amendment?
21, the better amendment. That simply changed the dollar amount, right?
That I
That was the
don't,
recommendation. I assume if it happened this quickly, it was 21 and not 22.
that I can check in actually by the end and circle back, but,
My Surface is restarting, so I would.
okay. Yeah, I apologize. I knew it moved out, but I didn't clarify with what amendment. I just,
Nation was the better one, and 22 did not make it,
Good.
so.
okay. So yeah, that's out. The diesel bill, House Bill 2007, was assigned to a subcommittee on capital construction just yesterday. So it seems like it's still, something's
Kind of
happening.
alive.
The oil trains bill, thank you for sharing that via email. You all know passed the House. The cap and trade bill with tons of fanfare for former city councilor Karen Power passed the House yesterday.
Tons of questions for farmers.
Tons of questions, but yeah,
Jeez.
but pretty incredible work on her part.
Longest discussion,
Yeah.
debate, or whatever you want to call
And
it.
some of it was so
Yeah.
specious, it was gross.
Yeah, so that passed the House, so that's on its way to the Senate. The speed bill, 558, the one that provides local control, has passed both chambers now. So it needs to get signed by like the Speaker and the Senate President, and then it'll go to the governor. The bag ban has been passed by both chambers and is on its way to the governor's desk as well. So.
Nice.
Is there any doubt about the speed bill? Is there, I mean, should we maybe just send a
Doubt?
little reminder that,
No, I think it's clear. It's cleared both chambers.
Okay.
So, and I don't think it's ever received a veto threat that I've heard of.
okay.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. Okay, so last time we were here, I said I would bring you a resolution for Monroe Greenway.
Back up to the state.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Thing. I'm
Yeah.
going to forget the number of the bill. It's like, has to do with skinny lots. Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
No, I
Okay.
think I know what you're
Pull
talking
it up.
about.
I have no idea.
Zero lot line setbacks and.
SB 534. So it's in Kenny Geyer's committee, and she reached out to me a while back to ask what we thought of it. And I reached out to Denny, and he doesn't think much of it. He thinks it would be bad. Initially, he wasn't super concerned because it was supposed to be only cities over 25,000, which we'll eventually get to, but we aren't at yet. And then they dropped the number to 10 yesterday or today, or did something. Don't know where that's sticking.
What does it do?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
never talked
the
about it.
summary
So-
doesn't actually summarize anything.
It's what it sounds like it does, and I, let me think if I could,
Where is it in?
It looks like it's, sorry, I'm just pulling it up.
House Committee on Rules.
you can find it? You're beating me to it, so I won't.
Yeah, House Committee on Rules is where it's at.
It had a hearing today.
Yeah, work session was today.
Looks, is it?
Is that all of
short?
it?
Are we able to
Want me to pull it
pull it
up?
up? Is it, would that be?
Oh, no, did I do that thing that's wrong? Okay, no, okay.
I mean, I can read it to you if you want. It's not that long.
No, it's,
I'd pull it up.
Local government
it's-
shall allow, subject to reasonable local regulations relating to siting and design, the development of at least one dwelling unit on each platted lot that is zoned to allow for single-family dwellings unless, and then there's some exceptions about natural hazards and floodplains and stuff.
so what that does, I don't know if any of you have ever been in any of these land use decisions where we get the map and they show the original platted lots, and they're these ridiculous little tiny, tiny lots, which we're not using. None of the lots currently are those lots, but this, as I understand it, would reenact those. So what it would do, the concern is that somebody will come in, let's say we've got a lot that's, say, 70 feet by whatever, 100. They can come in, if there's those tiny lots on it, they can tear down the house that's on it, divide the lot lengthwise, and then I think it's a minimum of 33 feet, does it say on there?
I don't know.
Lot frontage, so then build two skinny houses in the place of one house. Apparently, the speaker is of the mind that this is going to help with affordability, but I have a hard time,
Oh, I noticed
at least
Portland's opposed to
in
it.
Milwaukee.
Portland's opposed to it.
Portland, Dan Eisenbach called me today, or we talked today about it, and they are pushing back on it. They said, at the very least, please put the date of enactment at the same time as 2001, so that we're not rezoning twice. Right now, it's set to be valid in January, assuming it passes.
Yeah, so I just pulled up, because I just went into the testimony, because sometimes it's easier for me to understand the bill if I read someone else's letter. So I pulled up Portland's, and that just matches what you said, which is, as of June 4th, they were opposed. We'd have to go and pull, I don't know what they did to it today.
They reduced the
Yeah, they reduced
city
it to 10,
size to
so that was when it
10,000.
became problematic.
So you can
Theoretically.
just hold,
Stay still.
yeah, to get
Stop
the
scrolling.
full, go down a little bit so we can actually see it though.
That one?
Yeah.
We good?
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about minimum frontage or minimum.
wait.
Well, no, but it
There's-
does say citing, a reasonable citing.
Yeah, and
and
there's
design
the
and-
population greater than
10,000.
10,000 is on the top. So that's what just changed.
So I don't know what happened today. I guess, am I hearing you say that you might want to, well, no,
1,000 change is what
Is that
happened.
today?
Theoretically today, or just,
No, this is May 30th.
yeah, they had a work session today, and I don't know what happened
Yeah.
with it.
whatever reason, everyone reached out to me today.
Well, what I pulled up is 534B, and it does have 10,000.
That's what, yeah, that's what we were just
So-
looking at, but what
Yeah.
came out of this?
Today, the work.
Okay.
Okay,
out of the-
if you
the
click on
hearing
that,
today.
will we see the, where it is and then what the recommendation is that came out of this?
It says do pass with B engrossed. Printed C engrossed. So adopted amendments, B6. We're getting there. Delete 10,000
Oh,
and
back
insert
to
25.
25 then.
Okay.
So take it back to 25.
And also up to and March 1st, 2020.
Okay.
So they did those two things.
That's the 3 months that Portland was afraid of. It's just, it's 3 months to try and
It's too
do a
fast.
whole lot of work. Yeah.
What would you all like to do with this legislation?
For sure push back on the March 1st, 2020. And how much do we care since
I'd want to hear from Denny. So I don't want to
I can read you exactly what Denny wrote.
I don't think we should
Hang on.
take a position.
Assuming this will come up. And then a long email that came in since then from Erin Doyle, because I reached out to her today. LOC's been working on opposing it. So Danny says, I took a quick look at this. I would recommend against it and leave these decisions to local government to decide how to address these small 25 by 100 or 33 by 100 lots. The current proposal doesn't currently impact Milwaukie because it's intended to apply to cities over 25,000. But could grow to that size in 10 years. The Milwaukie zoning code requires a minimum size of 3,000 square feet for a lot to be considered buildable for a single-family home. The 3,000 square foot limitation prevents extensive redevelopment in a portion of Hector Campbell neighborhood. SB 534 would override this and allow many existing lots in Milwaukie to be redeveloped by demolishing existing homes and splitting the lots into two 25 by 100 lots. The area below is between 37th and 42nd. The pattern extends east to 52nd. Many of these are our affordable homes. Demoing one 350K home and replacing it with two 450K homes doesn't help. And let me go to what Erin says. She says, thanks for the feedback, Mayor Gamba. I'm working with Portland to see if I can get the bill stopped at this point. Too many unknown impacts. It would help if you could reach out to your representatives to flag the issue that this concept raises for Milwaukie. I know that you also have good relations with the Speaker's office, and I think that they need to hear your perspective as well. I imagine that Milwaukie will reach the 25,000 threshold in a short time, but allowing longer compliance to ensure that your missing middle policy matches with the ability to build on lots that are historically platted but not currently planned for the development. Asking for a change in compliance dates is a simple ask from a technical perspective, but has not been successfully heard. One of the hardest things related to this bill is that very few cities know if they have plat maps that are so out of date compared to their zoning and development patterns because they were created in the early part of the last century and land use planning and land division laws were not in place until the latter part of the 1960s, early 70s. So the ability to determine the impacts to members has been hard to assess. Your map in the email below is a perfect example of the issue in the timing of development versus land use laws. There is also no requirement in this bill that the buildings that a developer puts in need to be sold at an affordable price point. And with HB 2001 coming on the books, it's likely that you might end up with duplexes on these narrow plats, which is possibly far more capacity than a city is planning to plan for with infrastructure. It's hard to know what costs this bill will have if the planning processes can't be done at the same time. Please let me know if you have more questions, but given the timing of the session, it's likely that time is of the essence and outreach likely needs to be quick, at least to say, let's work on the issues in the interim. So it sounds like we should reach out to Karen and Kathleen at the very least and say that we're not loving this, and I guess to the Speaker's office.
I don't actually feel that I feel like I need to take a position on this one since it doesn't affect us. And I also agree with the timing thing. I think that it makes sense to have it tie a little bit more closely to the 2001 that they are considering. But I have fewer concerns about some of the points that are raised in that email. I think a lot of those things are the same types of things that were said in opposition to 2001, which I think are not always genuine concerns. So I do note that it does protect the city's ability to, I disagree, I guess, that there aren't considerations for water, sewer, street, because I thought I saw in the bill itself, in the adopted, or the engrossed, that those were considerations that cities can.
Floodplain, natural disasters, hazards. Well, it does say subject to reasonable siting. Where is that?
Citing design standards.
Subject to reasonable local regulations relating to siting and design. That's vague. I don't know what that means.
That's just-
You know, that's a point to be litigated down the line, frankly. But the actual enumerated exceptions do not say anything about siting and design. They say they're all about sort of natural resource constraints, slope and floodplain.
The lot cannot be adequately served. No, the local government determines that the lot cannot be adequately served by water, sewer, storm, drainage, and streets. That's what I was talking about.
I mean, I do think, I'm fine with not taking a position. I think I think it's not good form to take a position when you're not fully informed about the scope of things and you haven't had a discussion about, with the relevant staff and everything. I do think that I wouldn't say that just because it's the 25,000 though, because we're going to be at 25,000 in the next 4 or 5 years. So it is going to apply to us.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, this has not been on my radar at all. I have not given this any thought until the last 10 minutes, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I didn't bring it up earlier because, as we're all pointing out, it doesn't apply to us. I was just answering Kenny Geyer's question from the standpoint of city government.
The other piece is, Mayor, you can call if you want to, as you. And I think that that's probably at this point where we are in the session, that if we haven't been tracking a bill, it's just too hard for staff to try and get everything pulled together in time. But you are fully supported to do that, that you get to make that determination for you, and that we'll just go through this otherwise, as we didn't have enough information at the timeliness that we needed.
So you don't feel strongly about it other than the timing. Lisa, where are you? A little do you know, I guess.
Well, I don't like it. I don't like it, but I don't feel strongly about taking a formal position.
I understand, so too little.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I prefer not to do anything.
yeah. I don't have enough.
Okay, thanks.
Is that it for bills, or do we want to, is there anything else that I need to look up on Orlis otherwise?
All I'm aware of.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah,
no problem.
Well, this is probably more for Counselor Heisey, because she probably knows better, but is there anything more to be said about the diesel bill? Do you know anything?
I don't know anything. I haven't, my impression has been that it may be a political football at this point in trying to get HB 2020 passed in the
Yeah,
Senate.
that it's going to be the casualty, yeah.
Yeah, which I'm not happy about, but I'm just being realistic.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, I said I would bring you a resolution on the Monroe grant application. And then I went and read the last resolution you all passed on Monroe, and it said, seek out all grants to fund this project. And I was like, well, I think I have that. But I would like to do a support letter from you all. So I've done a draft, and we're not sending it in until Thursday. So I just wanted to give you all some time, if you can send me any edits that, if you have them, that you would like to make. I'm sure that they're needed. I can incorporate those and include it in with the application on Thursday. So then I just wanted to quickly touch base on the Metro Transportation Funding Measure. So there is another task force meeting tomorrow night. Mayor Gamma will be attending. My understanding of where you all in the process is there has been a refinement down of some tier 1 type corridors. McLaughlin is still one of those corridors. That's the one that you all had highlighted as being of most interest to us, and specifically of most interest related to if you could get the undercrossing at Kellogg as a part of that. So I will let you expound on kind of next steps, but I think the meeting on Wednesday, which I am planning to go, I haven't made them, but I was going to go watch this one, is about sort of the regional programs, or maybe they're going to get into trails, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like either. I haven't had time to read what they've sent. But it's about, they're moving away from the corridor conversation because that's now in the hands of the local
investment teams
to look at actual projects and then make recommendations. So the next thing that we're, next 3 meetings are programs. So it could be things like we want all transit to be free, or we want all buses to be electric, or we want, things that are not salt and concrete, other things.
And so you all provided some suggestions, and I did some outreach to folks to help populate those local investment teams. And I did have success with 2 folks that were interested. So Nicole Perry was interested, and I saw her name on the list. I haven't absolutely confirmed that she's on it, but she's on the list for a local investment team member here. And Chip Jangers was the other one that you had suggested, and he's on the last list that I saw. I don't have the formal list at this point. It's been moving pretty fast, but the last draft I saw had both of them included on it, which I think is great.
First one I couldn't hear.
Nicole Perry.
Oh.
Yeah. They are starting to meet over the course of the summer. We will be participating at a staff level just to talk through projects, articulate projects, so that those teams have what they need in order to review and discuss. And so we're working through that now. It is a lot of inputs to kind of a big machine, but we're trying to make sure that we have our inputs in there. I do think 99E and McLaughlin in general is going to be a really interesting conversation to have. There's a lot that I don't know yet that's going to come forward because TriMet's been doing some project development work around enhanced transit on the corridor that I think should be interesting. But it will certainly prompt a conversation, I think, between the cities and the county and everyone in Clackamas County about how we want to use that space on McLaughlin moving forward, and really seeing what people are interested in. So I'm particularly excited in that part, just to see what's coming forward from TriMet's project development work on the corridor. The county has definitely been pushing really hard on their priorities. Their top priority at this point really is the Sunrise, an extension of the Sunrise project. And I'm telling you all this just because all of these things do kind of start to blur together in terms of priorities as we move forward. So as you all move into the C4 conversation around, so we're turning in our application for the Regional Flexible Fund grant. We're definitely one of the ones that's on the list for Clackamas County. They only had 6 total applications. The county has an application, and Gladstone has an application, and we have one. And then it will come back to C4 for input and ranking. And so just as we're heading into that conversation, I just want to make sure I'm giving you all the background that you need when you're participating about all these different regional pressure points, about who cares about what, so that you're well informed to participate in that forum as well. Because my hope is we come out of that with C4 support for Monroe. That's my hope. But yeah.
Haven't they pledged that before?
Pretty much guaranteed, but
Yeah.
we'll have to keep their feet.
It did come up many times at the retreat that Milwaukie had given up its place in order to make other things possible. So.
Okay.
And that was other people bringing it up, not us.
Is there anything from the retreat? And I'm sorry I didn't go there, Chair. I was running through Rogue Valley.
How could you?
I know. Is there anything from the retreat that would be worthwhile to share with the group about project discussions or anything?
Definitely Sunrise Corridor is, there was a lot of discussion about that and its importance. The C to, is it C to C?
C.
Yeah, C to C is the other one that the county was really pushing.
Yeah.
But I think those two, they were sort of, it seemed like there was still an advocacy mode around those, whereas 99, it was kind of, yeah, we know this is a good project corridor, and we should
That
focus
was one
on
of the
it.
4 that had unanimous support from the entire committee, and
Yeah.
so that McLaughlin's easy. Which is so funny because it wasn't on the original list.
Yeah, well, McLaughlin is really interesting because there's been so much long-range planning done around McLaughlin, but it is largely conceptual. I mean, when I had Denny go back and pull what's on the books for McLaughlin, what do we see? It's old and it's conceptual. So unfortunately, it's not as well positioned as like a TV highway corridor where they've done a lot of almost some preliminary design work where it's more ready to go. So I think in the case I've been trying to make on the undercrossing is that we have stared at it 6 million different ways, and we do have some preliminary design work in the form of what ODOT looked at before. So I'm saying that one is more ready. But that's why I am really interested to see what TriMet's going to come back with, because that may be a much higher level of kind of actual design than we've had. But I know that the Metro staff are particularly interested in it, and I believe it has a soft spot in Chair Peterson's heart as well. And I know there's been a lot of conversation at the committee. So there's a lot of interest in McLaughlin, even though it doesn't have the identified projects that some of the other corridors have. So.
I guess the only other thing I would mention is that the Oak Grove Lake Oswego Bridge was a tier 2.
Yeah.
If you hadn't
But we
caught
are
that.
we have
The
the
study.
$200,000 study that we're going to be going through that hopefully will finish about the time that everything else does, so that
Right.
we can put it into the mix at the very least.
So if you were hearing anything, I'm on kind of high alert heading into the Regional Flexible Fund process, just for any and all kind of, if you're hearing concerns or questions or anything like that. My talking points on that are, this is different than the application last time. This is for construction. It is not for design, and it is actually the last gap that Metro would be funding in this project now at this point, is they can close it and finish it up, which is a very different place than it was last time, if you actually piece all the other parts together. So it's high leverage. I think at this point we're looking at, we're bringing 65% in funding to the project overall, because it's a $10 million project. So it's different. It's ready to go. It's well positioned with the other funding sources that we've identified. So
Bringing 65%
because essentially
is throwing in how much?
Yeah, so we have the $3 million that's leverage. We have ODOT paying for the 224 signal. We are constructing the Linwood diverter and hawk signal as a part of the Safe Routes to School project on Linwood. And you have the construction of the multi-use path coming through with development. So all of that is on the, at least either secured or highly likely to be secured side of the equation. And then you're asking for the final push from Metro. So, and I will tell anyone that if you would like me to, if they have any questions. But yeah, that's sort of what I'm focused on right now. That's it.
Good job. Whew.
So those T2020 meetings, are they putting notes from those, like minutes from those up online? If we want to catch up on those, are there things we can read?
They have meeting notes. I know this because I was just reading them. They are, I wouldn't, minutes is a stretch.
They're not really user-friendly.
They're not.
Oh, yeah.
More a record of what occurred that only makes sense if you were there, I think.
That's part of what I'm trying to, that's part of why I'm going to go tomorrow night. Because I've been good at kind of telling me what's going on, and I hear recaps of it, but actually go watch it. Because I've been to a lot of the staff meetings, but I just kind of want to see how the task force is going. Because you guys will be wrapping up at some point, right? Like in the next 3 or 4 months? I don't know if you go dark while the LIT meet.
Some programs,
Yeah.
and then after the local, whatever they're
Yeah.
called, come back, then there's another couple, 3 months
Yeah.
on that for a final decision.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all I have, unless you guys have anything else you want to share with one another under this topic.
It's not really this topic, but I just, since you mentioned the Linwood diverter, has that hubbub quieted down?
I feel like if I say it has, then it will not be quiet. So it was pretty active about a month ago. And we were hearing from folks, I would say regularly, kind of a set of 4 to 5 different stakeholders, a lot of them county residents that have been impacted by it in particular. And so, but we told them we were going to get counts. And once we made clear to them that we were going to get those traffic counts, we were going to get them done before the school year ended, because they were afraid we were going to get them during the summer and have them be artificially depressed. They felt better about that. It's not like they like the diverter now, but they liked that we were getting the counts and that we were going to be using that information to help inform the design. I have tried to be really consistent the whole time, though, that those counts may determine something about what we need to do off system, but the diverter is identified in 2 projects, both the Monroe Greenway and the Linwood Safe Routes to School project. So the count won't have us taking the diverter out. It would be something else we find that perhaps we need to do in addition to the diverter to make the system work. So yes, right now I'm not getting calls about it. I might after I say that on TV. But I do think there's an expectation that towards the end of the summer we're reporting back out on what the actual traffic volume increases are. And what often happens is when you that the carrying capacity a lot of streets is actually a little bit higher than people realize. And so if you've had 0 traffic and now you have some, it feels like more than that part of the system can handle, but oftentimes it actually is what that part of the system is supposed to handle. So, but we'll see how it goes.
So are we going to have traffic? Are we going to have that discussion before the end of the summer?
We did it. I wasn't planning to bring it to you. Guys want me to bring the counts to you?
We can see them.
I think.
Yeah.
We can decide if we need.
Yeah, I think it probably would make more sense for us to talk to you about them in the context of the Linwood project. So we came and give you a briefing on the Linwood project, and then we talked about, hey, we got these counts. We used that information to, finalize the design for the permanent installation of the diverter. And then here's some other elements that we're thinking about due to some diversion we saw that exceeded what we had thought we would find. I think it makes sense there. In its isolation, it might not be super helpful.
Okay,
But
fair enough.
yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
you.
So we don't have any executive, do we?
Nope, you just get food.
Get to eat. All right. So we are adjourned for the work session. We'll be back at 7 or 6 o'clock for the regular.